In the 1970s, he and comedy partner Cheech Marin created two characters that would huff and puff their way to numerous chart-topping albums and a half-dozen hit movies. But eventually the two would split, and the stoner image he had created for himself may have led to his real-life legal troubles. But rest assured, time in prison has not dampened his spirit. He continues to entertain his hardcore fans with his stand-up comedy, and a recurring role on the hit TV show That 70s Show has helped him attract brand new ones as well. Hello, I'm Ernie Manouse. Coming up on Interviews, our conversation with comedian, activist, and author Tommy Chong. If it hadn't been for pot, where do you think your life would be today?
I'd probably be a nuclear scientist.
So is it a good thing or a bad thing that pot came into your life?
It just happened, you know. I was going to school. I wasn't doing too bad in school. I had dropped out one year and I went back and I had a contest with a friend of mine and we were seeing who could get the best marks. And then this jazz musician handed me a Lenny Bruce record and a marijuana cigarette. And I think I quit school about a month later. I knew, after I smoked that pot, I knew that school was not for me. I had to, I was going to be a blues player, or I was going to do something. But I was going to get my education off the street.
As much as you talk about pot, joke about it and all of that, you are not the character most of the world thinks you are.
You mean I don't smoke that much pot?
Well, I don't know how much you actually do smoke, but
No,
you are not the character, no. Chong. You're a different person.
Totally.
Does that bother you that so many people have the two cemented in their mind?
Not at all. Not at all. No. I have the greatest respect for my audience. I really do. I mean, any audience, I mean, if people are giving me money to do, to smoke pot and have a good time, I love them. And I learned, see, when Cheech and I got together, I had already had a career. I'd been a musician with Motown, and I'd written songs. I knew the business. And one thing I did learn is that when you get a niche, when you find a niche, then you cling to it,
Yeah.
Cling to it, and thank God you got it, And the thing I learned, what made Cheech and I so popular to this day, 30 years later, was that I discovered that Charlie Chaplin formula, which was he had been different characters. He's a very clever guy. He's a composer. He was a writer, great actor, dialects, everything. But he found that if he played a character that everybody could look down on, then he would entertain everybody. He never left anybody out. Kings, queens, bums, they all could relate to him. And so I took a little page from his book, and that's what Cheech and I did. So my character as a stoner, it didn't matter if I was rich, poor, or whatever. I'm that big old goofy stoner that everybody can relate to and feel good about, And that's what I did with Cheech. Cheech was a Chicano character, little gang guy, that wasn't even in a gang, He was just a good guy that everybody, and it would cross color lines, it crossed economic lines, it crossed every kind of line. And that's why we were so popular, because everybody could look down on us.
Yeah. Most comedians tend to, when I talk with them, have a dark side. They tend to not be humorous and joyful people. They tend to save that for their moment on the stage.
Yeah.
Do you find that in your own life or not?
If I allow myself to go there. What I did, before I was a comedian, I was affected. In my book I write about going to Bible camp. And I went to Bible camp when I was 7, 8 years old. I was a little kid in the ghetto, not really a ghetto, it was the country. We lived on the line, you know, where the building inspector never went past that line, so you could throw up any kind of shack or anything. And I got pictures of my little shack that I grew up in. And so one summer day, I got picked up by this car pulled up, a couple of people in it said, "Would you like to go to Bible camp?" And I said, "Yeah." You know, what's that? You know, and so I went, and I was taught. I got some very basic spiritual training. I won't say religious training. It was a religious Christian camp, but they focused more on the spiritual aspect, and the spiritual aspect, the power of prayer. For one, I learned the power of prayer when I was really young, and it worked. I used to watch it work. You know, like I would pray for my dad to get a better job, and he would. Yeah. And I'd pray for my mom, you know, to come home from the hospital and be well and take care of us, and she did. And everything I prayed for would work. And so I kept that with me. And then as I got older and I got, you know, to be a teenager and I got to be hanging with the rough crowd, the wrong crowd and that, there was always that little side of me that would get me out of trouble because I would never go over that line. You know, there was a moral line that I never crossed. And so rather than a dark side, there's a spiritual side of me.
Does it surprise you that people are shocked to hear you say that? You know, I think there's a lot of people out there that would never imagine that there's a spiritual side. I mean, in your book, there's a lot about religion.
Yes, it gets me through. It got me through life. It got me to where I am now, you know. So
then how do you balance that with the drug use then?
Well, the drug use can be very spiritual. And the drug use, yeah, it is. I mean, you take acid, you take LSD. I mean, I've talked to ministers that found their calling, you know, from taking LSD. Because LSD, it can work, it depends on the individual, you know. And historians figure that Joan of Arc was a product of LSD, you know, that she had taken. Because back in France, LSD is a fungus that grows on wheat. And back in the day, you know, they had no quality control with their wheat, so sometimes there would be fungus on their bread, and all of a sudden these saints and everybody else would, boom, they'd get a shot, and their mind would open up.
Now you say mind opening, and some people would say it's just a hallucination. It's not a vision. It's nothing more than just your brain misfunctioning, misfiring. True, false? What do you think?
Well, it depends on the individual. You know, Carl Sagan was a big advocate of pot, you know, and LSD. Yeah, Timothy Leary. I've known Timothy. I knew Timothy for years. You know, we had a great rapport. You know, and he was very, very intelligent, beautiful person. You know, but more on the druggy side. See, in the drug world, in the drug culture, I'll give you a real good example about drugs. Like, there's the heroin user, right? In the ghetto, and, you know, he goes to jail, he gets locked away, and he comes out, and he's still a heroin user. You know, once you get addicted to drugs, those kind of drugs, there's no escape. You never get off it. Cocaine, you know, Britney Spears, you look at all these people, you can see the effects of drugs, of that kind of drugs. But then you could take a guy like John Hopkins of John Hopkins University, he was a brain neurologist. And he got addicted to cocaine because he was experimenting with cocaine to use medically. Like cocaine was, and they still use it medically, say, for the eye operations. You know, they put a drop of cocaine in there and it'll freeze, and then they can do the operation. And so, but what happened with Hopkins, he got addicted to cocaine. And the only way he could get off his addiction to cocaine was to get on heroin. So he got on heroin, and he performed his best operations, his most famous operations, while he was on heroin. But he was on heroin with doctors prescribing, you know, giving him the right doses, and as a doctor, he knew exactly how much he needed. And there's so many people in the scientific world, the art world, the world of art, world of music, and all that have been addicted to Freud. Freud was a cocaine addict. John Coltrane, one of the greatest musicians of our time, was a heroin addict. Charlie Parker was a heroin addict. Wes Montgomery, a great guitarist, was a pothead.
What about then the issue of if it's against the law, whether it's right, wrong law or wrong law, what do you do? How do you balance then?
Well, there's obviously there's good laws, there's bad laws. One time slavery was a law. There was a law.
All right.
You were allowed to have slaves. And one time there was a law that said that black people weren't allowed to ride in the front of the bus. That was a bad law, but people obeyed it. And people that didn't obey it went to jail. There are some laws that you have to say, that's not right.
Now, a lot of people think you went to jail for drug use. And they're wrong.
No.
Explain what you went to jail for.
I went to jail to save my son from going to jail. My son had formed a company, a glass water pipe company. And he was selling water pipes all over the country. And the feds got a hold of that, through High Times magazine, and so they put out a thing called Operation Pipe Dreams. And this was around the Iraqi war, by the way. And so the Bush administration, led by John Ashcroft, came after me because I was the famous guy, in the bong business, and my face was on the bong, and so it was Chong bongs, and so they set up a bust. What they did, they formed a phony head shop in Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania, because there's only 2 states that would really use this law,
Right.
prosecute this law. It was a federal law, but it was only 2 states that would really enact it, go after it. And Pennsylvania was one. Pennsylvania is the home of the DEA, by the way. And so they ended up raiding my house, coming in the middle or in the early morning, and they found like a pound of pot. I'd grown 2 plants on my roof, and I give away. I don't sell anything. I just give everything away, to my friends and to artists and that. But there was a pound that I didn't even know it was in the house, and they found that. But they didn't charge me with any kind of drug use. They charged me with 1 count of conspiring to ship a bong across state lines.
Now, if I remember correctly, in that operation, 55 people got arrested, indicted.
Yes.
You're the only one that went to jail?
I was the only one that went to jail, yeah.
How do you explain that?
I was the only Chong, the famous one. And the only reason I pled guilty, because I wasn't guilty. I wasn't guilty of anything.
Because you hadn't even sent the bongs. That was your son's business.
It was my son's business, and we could have fought it. We could have, but you can't fight. Saddam
They're out
couldn't
to get
fight
you.
him,
Yeah.
If they're out to get you, they're out to get you. And I was surrounded by lawyers, and where I live, I got a lawyer on every side of my house, and the lawyer across the street gave me free advice. He said, do the time. Do the time. You're not going to beat the government, They want you, they got you. So I did the time, and I really became more of an activist since.
Yeah. What was the time like in prison?
It was an experience that I'm very glad I went through. I feel, you do have a badge. When you go to prison, there's a good or bad. You got a badge. You've gone somewhere. And to me, it was a very eye-opening experience.
Yeah.
I learned a lot. I learned so much. So much about America.
First day in jail.
It was okay. It was kind of exciting because they greeted me like I was some sort of like celebrity. I mean, everybody except the warden wasn't there, but all the prison guys, they were there. And then they kind of walked me through, very gentle. It was like a movie set. It was like rehearsing a movie. Mr. Chong, we're going to have to put handcuffs on you now, but it's just formality. So they put cuffs on me just to walk me through the door, and then they took the cuffs off, and that was the only time I ever had handcuffs on. And then they said, okay, now we're going to put you in this room here until we, it's lunchtime right now, until we have someone to drive you over to the camp. Because there was a big main prison with a barbed wire and everything else, and then I was going to be in the camp around the back. And then they put me in this room, and then the prisoners would come by and look in, check me out.
See the star.
Yeah, I was in the star. And then the guy then I had to be strip searched. They had to get naked. He said, well, you might as well get used to it now, so take off all your clothes, and they put me through the whole thing. And then he says, okay, come on. Then it led me out and put me in a pickup truck. And on the way over to the camp, the guard goes, I got to tell you, man, I'm your biggest fan. I've seen all your movies, got all your records. How's Cheech doing? And he says, we're told we're not supposed to fraternize with you at all, while you're here, And we're not supposed to take pictures with you and everything else. But if you get a chance, would you give me an autograph,
As fun as all of that sounds, though, you wouldn't go back.
No. Being locked up is like being held hostage, being kidnapped. You lose your free will, your freedom. When you lose your freedom, it's like someone holding you. Ever been like a little kid and some guy grabs you and won't let you go, and there's nothing you can do about it? That's what it was like. And you lose your dignity. The first thing they want you to do, you can't have any dignity. You can't have anything that makes you human. You are a prisoner, and they remind you that every day. And you can't be creative. I was on the Bill O'Reilly show one time, and I was trying to get a joke in there, and I told Bill, prison's not as bad as you think it is. And Bill says, I told Bill, I said, you like it there, meaning something else. And Bill said, I think I would. If I went to jail, I'd organize, I'd have this, and I'd have that. And I thought, man.
He has no idea.
Has no idea.
So then how do you keep from being broken by it?
No, you can't get broken. Oh, no. No. It makes you stronger. I got healthier. I got clear. I quit smoking pot. I had to quit smoking. I quit smoking pot for 3 years.
Yeah.
And I found out one thing, man. You're just as slow and stupid as you are as straight as you are stoned.
So it didn't make any difference. So you just
no excuse, man.
Now, you mentioned Cheech. So people keep asking, Cheech and Chong, getting back together or not? There was a little rumor that there was maybe another movie project.
There was a lot of money a couple of years ago, almost 5 years ago now, just before I got busted. We had signed with New Line to do a movie. And I was excited, because I missed Cheech. I've missed him all, ever since we broke up, because we had such a good thing. And the minute Cheech left, the doors shut. They didn't want. They had talked to me, but they wouldn't give me any project. And everything I did after that, I had to do on my own. And but the minute Cheech and I got back together, the doors, boom, they flew wide open again. But Cheech, he's changed, and he's changed too radically. What happened with Cheech is that he was very young when he met me. And he wanted to be a singer. He's always wanted to be a singer. Kind of. You know what I mean? Like he was like a weekend kind of singing in the bathtub, singing in the shower.
Well, you guys start a band, right?
Well, we started the band because, I'd come off Motown, and then I ended up... I'll tell you how we got together. I had a strip club. Well, first of all, I had an after-hours club with my brother. We couldn't get hired anywhere, so we started our own club. And we started a bunch of clubs, and one hit, and it was an after-hours club, and that's when Motown discovered the band I had, Bobby Darin and the Vancouvers. And then we went, and then the club was so successful, we bought a strip club as well. Actually, it was a dinner club, and we turned it into a strip club. We were the first in Vancouver to have a strip club, and the girls had to wear pasties, And now
there are viewers right now that are saying, drugs, strip clubs. Who is Ernie booking on this show? Okay, so you got your strip club.
Yeah. And I went away. I got fired from Motown. I come back to work in the clubs and maybe put another band together. And then I went to the strip club, hung out at the strip club, and the show was terrible. The girls were beautiful, but there was no show. And so I wrote a show for the girls and the guys that I had in the show. And then the guy quit. And so I needed another guy, and I asked my doorman, if he wanted to be in the show. And he said, well, I'll do it if you do it. And so then I said, oh, okay. So I started performing and doing skits with the girls. Right. And then we needed a straight guy. We had a straight guy for a while, then he quit. His wife found out what he was doing. He yarded him off. And so then I hired Cheech. Cheech was looking for a job. And so then Cheech was in our acting troupe. It was an acting troupe for about we worked about 9 months.
Kind of like burlesque in a sense?
No, it was more like the Committee or the Second City. You know, only difference was the girls would take off their clothes at the end of the script. Whatever the skit was, it would show them taking off their clothes, getting naked somehow. You know, it was very tasty, very very funny, and we changed the audience from these hardcore perverts to a legitimate theater audience. And then we started doing more and more comedy, more and more theater type comedy, and then the group broke up, and then Cheech and I stayed together. And then we were going to form a band. We formed a band. Then we performed. But when we went to perform, because of my reputation of being a musician before, we got this great gig in front of about 1,000 kids. And so I said to Cheech, well, let's do some comedy first, and then we'll do the music. Well, the comedy just took over. And we did a 45-minute show, and that's how Cheech and Chong were formed.
So when it came to an end, why did it come to an end?
It was a natural ending. Everything comes to it. The Beatles. We were together longer than the Beatles. And it was the same ending as the Beatles. Just success ruins you. You see, you achieve everything you set out to achieve. And then after you achieve it, if you don't love what you're doing, what you do, then you go on to do something that you do love, because now you can afford it. And that's exactly what happened. Cheech got tired of being known as a funny little Chicano, and he wanted to impress on the people how really intelligent he is.
He wanted to be Don Johnson's sidekick?
Yes.
He wanted that.
Well, actually, he wanted to be an actor. He wanted to be considered, well, he wanted to be, you know, everything that actors get, you know. And the trouble is, be careful what you ask for, you know, because he lost all his comedic chops, you know. He goes on the road now and he MCs comedy shows, but he doesn't do really any serious, he doesn't do any Cheech and Chong bits, you know.
If you two got back together, would the spark still be there, do you think?
Well, we tried to get back together in Aspen at the Comedy Fest there, and I was excited, you know, and so I told Cheech, come on, let's do what bit are we going to do? And he goes, I don't want to do it. I said, why? He says, I just don't want to do it. I'm just going to sing. Sing? What? You know? He said, yeah. You wanted to sing a Chuck Berry song, which he did. And I said, well, at least sing a Cheech and Chong song, you know. At least, you know, we got hit records, you know. And so he sang Mexican Americans. And that was the closest he came to being Cheech again. And then that was it. He was wearing suits and, you know, it looked like Don Johnson's valet, you know, boring his clothes. But I got an act. I've been doing stand-up. So I finished the whole show, and I did an act. And I really nailed him because I did a bit about him and Don Johnson, you know, a song, Me and My Old Lady. And he wasn't too happy with that. And he hasn't really, we haven't really talked since, you know.
Yeah.
It
True or
was very
false,
nasty.
in Lion King, you guys were going to both be together, but they couldn't find you? Is that
No,
true, or
no,
just a
I
rumor?
turned it down.
Oh, you did turn it down?
I turned
Why?
it down.
You guys were going to be the two sidekicks in Lion King.
Yeah. I didn't want to work for Disney, to tell you the truth. Disney had dissed me, you know, and Cheech, you know. They didn't want anything to do with me. And all of a sudden, you know, Katzenberg is over at Disney, and he wanted us, and Katzenberg's a fan because we did favors for Katzenberg. I had no idea what I was doing, you know. I just knew it was Disney, and it was voiceover, and you know, nothing to do with dope, so I didn't want to do it. So of course, you know, Cheech ends up making thousands and thousands of dollars. And
Is it something you regret?
I would definitely regret that.
Yeah.
I definitely regret that one, you know, because I love voiceover work now. I do a lot of it now.
Yeah. And last thing before I let you go, the 70s show. How was that?
70s show was great. That was the only show I accepted. I turned down Dharma and Greg. They wanted me to be Dharma's father in that one. And I turned, you know, to read for it anyway, and I turned it down because that would be too perverted. Hey, daughter, come here. And then I turned down Nash Bridges. My agent got a call, said that Don's looking for, you know, sidekicks. You know, would I be interested in? Because I'd worked with Don before in Miami Vice, you know. And again, you know, I couldn't picture me walking around with a gun, arresting people, you know. You know, it wasn't me, so I turned that down. Then they called me about the 70s show, and I said, I love the name, the title, that 70s show. Okay, send me over a tape. So they sent me the tape. I looked at it, loved the kids. And then when I was there, you know, I never had a big role. I've never done television before, so I had to learn that whole game, you know, that whole thing. And so I did it, and I really used the 70s show as a school. I would go to school when I had the chance. I'd sit and watch David Traynor direct the kids. And I'd watch the lighting and watch how they did everything. And I really learned how to do a sitcom. Yeah. And I really have a lot of respect for people that work in television.
Well, last thing, I do believe that your wife thought Ashton Kutcher was doing a drug bust, or punking you guys when your drug bust happened at your house, and she was getting her makeup on because she thought she was going to be on TV. Is that true?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to sit down, chat with us. Pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you. I had a good time.
Tommy Chong.
Oh, do you want to get high, by the way?
To order a DVD of this or any episode of Interviews, please visit HoustonPBS.org.